This show is part of the RetroZap.com podcast network.
And welcome, everybody, to a special episode of the Animanicast. And welcome once again to the Animanicast. We are the only podcast out there that's dedicated to the animated series, Animaniacs. And here we explore the series episode by episode, exploring all the cultural references and gags that we can find. And in the end, we give each episode a water tower rating. I am Joey, and joining me once again is my brother Nathan.
Wellesley Wild.
And across the country in Georgia, it's Kelly.
Hi.
Hi, Kelly. Well, today we are going to not be reviewing an episode. We will be talking about an Animaniacs comic book a little later this episode.
All three of us?
Just you and I, Nathan. Oh. Kelly,
Sorry,
we recorded half of this episode yesterday. So, yeah, it'll just be me and Nathan just talking to each other about Animaniacs issue number 3. But before we get all to that, let's get to some breaking news. Nathan, hit us with the Animaniacast news theme song.
This is the Animanicast news theme. It's the Animanicast news theme today. What's the news, Joey?
Well, the news was it's some surprising, well, maybe not so surprising, but definitely for many fans, some upsetting news this week for many fans. This comes from Deadline. This broke on Deadline.com a few days ago. Animaniacs Wellesley Wild set as showrunner of series reboot at Hulu. And I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Nathan, how were you saying it earlier?
I like to say Wellesley, but
Wellesley?
Yeah, I think it's Wellesley.
Wellesley?
I think it's Wellesley. I don't know. Hey, he can come on the show and he can correct it. Yeah. Open invitation. Open invitation.
Well, I'm just going to say Mr. Wild. Mr. Wild, Family Guy, Ted and Ted 2, has been tapped as executive producer and showrunner of Animaniacs, a rebooted version of the Peabody and Emmy-winning cartoon, which recently received a 2-season straight-to-series order at Hulu, with original series executive producer Steven Spielberg returning as executive producer for premiere in 2020. Co-produced by Amblin TV and Warner Brothers Animation, the new Animaniacs centers on Warner Brothers Yakko, Wakko, and the Warner sister Dot, 3 inseparable, irascible siblings who have a great time wreaking havoc. And basically it starts talking about how, you know, what Yakko, Wakko, and Dot are. And we all know about that. Fan favorite.
I feel like you paused after Steven Spielberg's name because you knew I would have a...
I had a feeling that you might say something, yes. Fan favorite characters, Pinky and the Brain, will also return to make appearances in each episode. Wild executive produces alongside Spielberg, as well as Sam Register, president of Warner Brothers Animation and Warner Digital Services, and Amblin Television co-presidents Justin Falvey and Daryl Frank. While that's a lot of executive producers producing this one. Back in the day, it was just Steven Spielberg. Now they have how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4, right? How many? I can't even see how many are listed off. There's so many. Anyway, I don't know how to count. Anyway, Wild is coming off of a long stint as a close collaborator of Family Guy creator Seth MacFarlane. That includes an 8-year run as a writer-producer on Fox's animated hit Family Guy. Wild also co-wrote with MacFarlane and Alex Sulkin the 2 Ted movies and co-created with Sulkin the MacFarlane-produced Fox comedy series Dads, which I think lasted just a few episodes. He's also been a co-executive producer on MacFarlane's latest Fox series, The Orville, which was just renewed for a second season. So Mr. Wild has been, he's been out and about, with Family Guy and other, mostly things that have been tied to Seth MacFarlane for quite some time, right? Nathan?
As far as I know. I mean, that's what his IMDb says.
Yeah, you were looking. Nathan looked up his IMDb, and I don't think, has any one of us seen the Ted movies at all?
No.
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen Million Ways to Die in the Wild West or whatever that one's called.
I did see that.
Are the Ted movies the one with the bear?
Yeah.
The talking bear, yeah.
It seems like these movies are like they're like one joke. Like, I feel like when I see the trailer, I'm like, I think I got the movie. Like, it was a cute trailer, but I think I got the gist of the...
Well, despite all the, basically the reaction, let's just talk about our reactions first of all. Kelly, what was your reaction upon first hearing this news?
I think I wrote this, and so this was my response to you, and I'm pretty sure this is verbatim. Ugh. Isn't that what I said?
Something like that, I believe. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I did. Yeah, that was my initial response.
Nathan, what about you?
I think my initial response was like downwards pointing thumb, but
thumbs down.
Yeah, there we go. That's what that's called. No, I enjoyed early Family Guy. I don't know. I don't think he was a part of the early Family Guy seasons, but I mean, I have nothing wrong with Family Guy. It's not necessarily what I was hoping for Animaniacs. I'm hoping that, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be that kind of comedy and everything, but still, like, it's hard to get really excited about it without having like Tom Ruger, for instance, and be
I think
exciting. I think
Nathan, I agree. I mean, our main concern, going into this reboot was that the creator of the show and senior producer Tom Ruger would not be involved, and a lot of fans were anxious about that as well. And as far as we know, he has not yet been approached to be on the series. And so there's been a lot of fan people with petitions of write Animaniacs, write. And, I went ahead and sent out my own little letter to Steven Spielberg a couple of weeks ago.
Has he responded yet?
He wait, let me check my email. No. But
I thought you sent a physical letter.
Check your mailbox.
No, I got to go to the mailbox. That's right.
That's the problem.
Oh, well, I put my email on it too, just in case he wanted to get back to me on email.
Oh, really?
You have to give him options. If he doesn't,
I didn't even think about
did you think
that.
of phone number?
I haven't sent my letter yet. I have to do that too.
Yeah, I looked at my little. See, this is what you do, folks. Online, there are several different professional business letter, tips. For what you should do, and the one I looked at said to put a way of contacting. So I said, well, an email. I'll put my email right there.
Did you handwrite it or type it?
I typed it, and then I put it in a physical envelope with a physical stamp, and put it in a physical mailbox. And
let's get physical.
Let's get physical. That's what we all need to do. No, we'll get into all that in just a little bit. But so, yeah, we had all been hoping that, and Tom's been a friend of the show. We've gotten to know Tom over these last few months, and it's just really been an honor to have him on, and just hearing about his stories of working on the show, and just the genuine love that he has had for the series and continues to have for the series is just remarkable. I think most creators or producers of series like that kind of when they step away or something gets canceled, they kind of go, yeah, well, that was in the past and I don't really want to go back to it. But that's not the case with Tom and many of the writers and directors who worked on the series before, and of course voice actors and everything. They all have a very strong connection and a yearn to go back to work on the series. Would you guys agree?
Yeah.
Well, the social media reaction has been loud and for the most part, pretty angry. Nathan, let's start with some of the more, I guess you could say, more some of the more reasonable reactions for the most part from our Facebook page. What are some of our listeners think about this when we posted the news?
So only reasonable?
Oh, well, we can read off the reasonable and unreasonable. Why the heck not?
I'll read off. Okay, here. This one's from Noah. It's a little lengthy, but he's got some points, at least some concerns. So to me, at least, it seems like a huge slap in the face to the original showrunner, Tom Ruegger, and the rest of the original people involved, especially since they didn't invite them back to inform them there was a comeback on the way. Not to mention, considering this Wellesley guy came from things like Family Guy and Ted, I'm expecting him to try and make Animaniacs more hip, crude, and edgy, which really isn't needed for a show like this. But yeah, oh well, I'll be sticking with the original seasons and movie all in all. It just seems like a huge disservice, not only to the fans, but to everyone that originally worked on the series. A wasted opportunity indeed. It won't be the same at all. It defeats the entire purpose of a comeback. People expect a continuation, not something completely different. So that was one of the more negative ones I got,
Yeah, but I think it was well said. I think it was well put.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's
You gotta respect the passion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. This is from Curtis. Animaniacs and I can't even say the two shows in the same sentence. There's one of a gif of just Bill Murray looking very sad. Malik says, "I'm out." Ryan says, "Well, I know something like this would happen. Why not just make Tom Ruegger showrunner again?" And then Ryan has a good point here. He's like, "I always laugh when people shun a project before even seeing the final product. Short-sighted of you to say, at least. Give it a chance. I know I will. Funny how people judge something unfavorably because it doesn't conform to the way they want it to be. Yes, I would love to see the original staff and voice actors back for the reboot." So, but yeah, at least Ryan's saying like, we can give it a chance, see what it's like. But
well, as for Twitter, and I'm going to just touch on a few of the reactions. Number one, I gotta give a shout out to Adu Payton, who actually alerted us to the news of this coming out. Of all the people who would have told us, we have a very good listener fan base. So if there's any kind of mention of Animaniac stuff, boy oh boy, the push alerts start coming up. But Mr. Payton was the first one out there to tell us. So thank you very much, sir, for that information. Well, we put it out. And here are some reactions here. And the funny thing is with Twitter, they have very long handles sometimes. So I'm just going to give them the @ thing. So @flipper_roll says, "Hoping it won't be pandering to the tween/kid demographic like Powerpuff Girl reboot." Again, that Powerpuff Girl reboot is a touchy subject for many people who talk about reboots. Let's see. Sean Garland right here, SR Garland, says, "A showrunner announcement, no casting of it yet. I was excited, but this is frankly poor. The Animaniacs setup remains a legendary circumstance, one that could be partially, willingly reassembled, and yet this is what we get." And let's see. Of course, one of my favorite reactions that I had to put out there was none other than Nate Ruegger, who Nate put out a GIF. His response was to, "What do you guys think about this?" He simply put Michael Scott, a GIF of Michael Scott from The Office, just staring at the screen, kind of angry and shocked, disappointed. I don't know. not happy Michael Scott, that's for certain. So I thought that summarized a lot of the opinions that were going out. This one right here comes from John Taylor, who is WV Pirate, and says, "Don't change the style of the Animaniacs. Discover why we live them and keep true to the humor. The fans are depending on you. Don't try to take over the world and make it your own." There's a lot of groans and a lot of, "Oh, this is terrible. I don't want the Family Guy to, I don't want it to be like Family Guy," et cetera, et cetera. Just overall been kind of a negative kind of thing. So before we go to some more of our thoughts and everything, and then into our comic book discussion, I'll just go over a couple emails that we received. This first one right here is from William. William says, I've heard that the reboot has a new showrunner, but I never thought it would be someone from Family Guy. Wellesley Wild isn't a good choice, but it could have been someone like, say, Tom Ruegger. Wild has written a couple of my favorite Family Guy episodes, like PTV, the FCC episode, The Road to the Multiverse, and the one people consider the best of the series, Petarded. But he's also written some of my least favorite, like Seahorse Seashell Party and Untitled Griffin Family History. Another thing that keeps me from being on board with him is that he hasn't been on any show besides being with Seth MacFarlane and the show that the TED films and the bad short-lived show Dads. So I'm starting to lose hope a little now. Why couldn't they just get Tom in as a consultant? Because he has a lot of experience. If there is more news, I'll be keeping my eyes open for more. Thank you for letting me comment. And finally, here's a quick message here from listener Malik.
Hello, Animanicast! This is Malik chiming in just to give my thoughts on the recent news that was just announced about the Animaniacs reboot. So, Wellesley Wild, So the biggest issue I have with this announcement is something that you may not initially think. I mean, I know he came off 8 years writing Family Guy episodes, but that doesn't necessarily mean Animaniacs is going to become the Family Guy Warner Brothers show, if you know what I mean. What really bothers me is the fact that they didn't get this guy because he has a pedigree with Warner Brothers and Warner Brothers Animation and stuff like that. The reason they got him is because he is a big name. You see his name and then you see what he did, like, oh, Family Guy, that's a big name. That'll get us on, like, the front page of this tabloid or whatever. Yeah, and I know that this is the typical Hollywood kind of thing. You want, like, a big name for your brand, but I can't be upset about it. I'm pretty upset about it. Something tells me that this reboot is going to be one of those shows where you hear every single thing about every single writer, actor joining the cast, and they have, like, this big background in Saturday Night Live or the new hotness of, like, Netflix or Hulu or whatever streaming site is new and popular these days, and it just doesn't gel with me. They're relying on star power rather than, well, what came before, you know? And we're still a long ways out before the reboot comes out, and anything could happen before then, but as of right now, I don't like where this is headed. But yeah, those are my 2 cents on the matter, and if you guys haven't already talked about it, I'd like to hear what you guys think about this. See ya!
So thank you, Malik. Yeah, Malik, as Nathan said earlier, just put on our Facebook page, I'm out. But luckily, expanded upon his thoughts very well.
Yeah, such a good listener.
Yeah, he really is an awesome listener and a great talker as well. So Malik, thank you very much for those thoughts. Let's get into this, guys. When we first heard this news, it was very deflating to our, thoughts. We were just like, oh, this is terrible. It's a lost cause. It's the fact is, I mean, Nathan, Kelly, and we're going to watch the show one way or the other because it's
we have to.
We have to. It's the Animanicast. We're going to watch it. And Wellesley Wild or however you want to Mr. Wild. He is a very accomplished writer. He is, he's done, various projects and everything like that. And I don't think any of us want him to be fired or anything like that. That's not in our thought process at all. But, we really believe that time is not up on getting Tom involved in this reboot / revival / whatever it happens to be. Because not only is he willing to do it, but so are many of the writers, and the fan community is really making itself heard. Just search for the word Animaniacs on Twitter, and you'll probably see many people. Or simply look at the comment section for many of these articles, such as Deadline or Cartoon Brew or what have you. They're saying, this is great, but wait a second. The creator is out there still, and one of the things that made Animaniacs so great in the first place was the people who were behind the scenes putting it together. What do you guys think? What are some of your thoughts about this?
Well, I trust Steven Spielberg, but I do find it odd that the original creative team hasn't been brought back yet, at least to our knowledge. And I don't know enough about Mr. Wild to say, what kind of job he would do or not. I've never been a fan of Family Guy. I've seen some of the Star Wars specials, but that's really about all I've seen. And it just, when I've caught it on other times, it just never struck me as terribly funny. It's just not my brand of humor, I guess. But I don't think they made the decision to bring the show back in a vacuum. Obviously, they knew it was still beloved, that there was still an audience for it. They surely monitored the, watch views or however they monitor it on Netflix. And so I can't believe that they are going to bring the show back into an unrecognizable form and alienate everyone who loved the show originally. It doesn't make good business sense. It doesn't make good creative sense. It just doesn't make sense. So I'm still holding out hope. And I've even said, just if nothing else, bring Tom as a consultant, a creative consultant, because he put his heart and soul into this show, and obviously still loves the characters. It sounds like he had an amazing time with everyone involved, and I know you can't always repeat the exact experiences over and over again. But when all these people were together, magic happened. It was an amazing show. And so if you start bringing in all this new blood, we've seen it kind of happen with the Star Wars films. It's become very divisive. And, you have people that don't like the people in charge now and think they aren't doing a good job. And of course, you've got people who love the direction it's going and everything else. And of course, they've been, hugely successful financially. So that's the bottom line, really. So it doesn't matter, the people that didn't like it still went and paid to watch it. So, but I would think, even Lucasfilm and Disney would still want to put out something that the majority of fans love. I don't think they're trying to alienate Star Wars fans, and I would like to think that Amblin and Hulu don't want to alienate Animaniacs fans. There are, no matter what they do, there's still going to be a contingent of people who don't like it, just because it's new and it's different. And that's okay.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's always the case. Like, no matter what, there's going to be people that are going to love it, and there's going to be people that hate it. Like,
yeah, and people have every right to do that, and they can, show that they don't want to by just not getting those subscriptions to Hulu and watching the show. So
and that's how you make your voice heard. It comes down to the money.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah.
Nathan, what are some of your thoughts about all this?
Well, yeah. So part of me worries that I've seen DuckTales. Well, I mean, they have the reboot of DuckTales, which I was a kid, and this new version doesn't have any of the original cast or anything like that, and it's doing very well. And I wonder, it almost worries me that they look at that kind of example and say oh, hey, we could just do something like that,
yeah,
Saturday Night Live people on, or something,
As much as I love Ben Schwartz, who is in DuckTales and in the upcoming Ninja Turtles cartoon, I love him. He's a hilarious guy. But I don't want him voicing Yakko Warner. You know what I mean? And that is, if they're going on this trajectory, I can't even say the darn word, but you know what I mean? If they're going this way with the creative team, then it makes you wonder what kinds of other decisions they might be kind of leaning towards when it comes to the presentation of it as well. If it worked for DuckTales, and that's the theme of, stuff what's going on for shows like Ninja Turtles and stuff, to get the big name actors, then gosh, it worries me that some of even the original voice talent will be forgotten as well. So, and again, I think one of the best ways to ensure that doesn't happen is to make sure that Tom is involved as much as possible in this upcoming reboot revival. If that is important to you as well, then you should consider, signing the change.org petition of write Animaniacs write, you should, heavily consider writing Steven Spielberg a letter, and
a nice letter.
A nice letter, nice professional letter. We are positive and professional, if nothing else, right? So please do that. I think that's really what we're all trying to say, is that this isn't over. It may feel like it to some, like, oh, just throw up your hands and I'm just not going to watch it anymore. I'm done. Well, folks, let's not throw in the towel just yet. Like Malik said on his voicemail to us, it is still early it's still 2 years away, and anything can happen. So I think the thing that we need to try to push, at least for right now, is that we try to, let Warner Brothers, Amblin, let those folks know that this is the way we would prefer the show to look like.
I would think now more than ever, is a time that you'd want to
absolutely.
Now that the news is fresh, and
Yep.
make sure your voice is heard.
Yep. Hey, get out on Twitter. Hey, you make your voice heard there. At Warner Brothers Entertainment, at Amblin Entertainment, and at Hulu. And of course, we'll put in our show notes a link to the change.org petition for Write Animaniacs Write, which you could also look up yourself pretty easily.
Is Mr. Wild on Twitter?
I have not looked. Actually, I take that back. I have looked, and I have not seen him on there. But so as far as I know, he is not on Twitter. And again, we're not asking for Mr. Wild to be replaced or kicked out of the production.
No.
Not at all. I mean, this he is an accomplished creator, and there's nothing wrong with getting new blood into a series.
Yeah, fresh ideas.
That's how series continue to live on. That's how we continue to have classic cartoon characters around to this day. We have to. It's just inevitable. If you want Animaniacs to be around, new stuff for years from now, then eventually you're going to have to get new people in. But
Animaniacs without Tom Ruegger is like Muppets without Jim Henson.
Yeah, and if Jim Henson were still around and just saying, "Hey, everybody,"
well, no, and that's what because he's not around, and I mean, I think Jim Henson's been gone longer in my life than he was alive in it, but I still remember him, obviously, and his contribution in the Muppets. I mean, he was the heart and the soul of the Muppets, particularly Kermit. And even though the Muppets have continued and have done great things, they never seem to have quite captured that old glory. Maybe with the exception of the Muppet Christmas Carol, because I love that.
Yeah.
But there always seems to be something slightly missing or different. And, of course, you can't go back and recapture your childhood. But the Muppets are never going to be the same. They're, partly because they're so corporate now, with Disney having purchased them, in the days leading up to Jim Henson's death, or not days, but in the time period they were working on the deal before he even passed, and then Disney bought it. But it's not the Muppets he envisioned, I guess is the best way to say it.
Right. We don't want this. Yeah, and exactly. We need Tom's involvement. He's out there. He wants to be involved. And that's the thing. He's out there. He would love to be involved. He wants to be out there. He is available. And let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can do. So head to the change.org petition. I will also, of course, include Mr. Spielberg's address in our show notes, as well as on our Twitter and Facebook feeds for those who are interested in doing those. But please, folks, you gotta make your voices heard now. If you wait too long, you sit on your hands, then it's just, well, it may be too late. So
I would say do it before February.
Absolutely. Make sure you get it. The sooner the better.
Time is of the essence. And we even have a poll on Twitter that people can...
That's right. Nathan, do you have that poll in front of you right now?
I do have that poll in front of me right now.
So what's the question?
Okay, so the poll is, now that the news is out that Wellesley Wild from Family Guy will be the new showrunner of Animaniacs, what are your feelings about the upcoming seasons on Hulu? Hashtag Animanicast poll. Attention, Warner Brothers Entertainment, Amblin Entertainment, and Hulu. So we got all them on this. So they're all paying attention to the results of this. So you can either choose excited, I can't wait, upset, where's Tom Ruger, or unsure, I'll wait and see. So yes, there you go.
All right. So there you go. Head to twitter.com/Animaniacast or simply search on #Animaniacast poll. Make your voice heard. And with that, we're going to go ahead and close up this first half and go straight on over to the second half of our show, where it's me and Nathan talking about issue number 3 of the Animaniacs comic book.
Hey, Dad, this is Pinky, and you're listening to Animanicast. You know why? Because you're going to take over the world.
Narf.
Let's go ahead and get into our discussion right now of Animaniacs comic book. And this is Animaniacs comic number 3. And this was originally published, I don't know. Hang on.
It was July of 1995.
There we go. I see it now. July of 1995. On the cover of issue number 3, we have Pinky and the Brain with a bunch of cavemen surrounding them. The cavemen are looking down very angrily at Pinky and the Brain. And Pinky is dressed like Wilma from the Flintstones, and the Brain is dressed up like Fred Flintstone. He has the whole leopard print thing and blue tie going on. And yes, Pinky has kind of a dress and like his little, instead of the pearls, the little rock necklace around his neck. And Pinky looks to the Brain and he says, "That outfit is simply smashing, Brain." And the Brain says, "Don't say smashing, Pinky," because they have big clubs and they're looking down at the mice.
Yeah, all the cavemen look pretty angry.
Well, this first one, in the first part of this comic, is, of course, featuring Pinky and the Brain. It's our cover story. It's Pinky and the Brain in Rewriting History. And this was written by John Walker. It was, the penciler was Neil Sternecki. Inker was Scott McRae. Letterer was Bob Pinaha. And colorist was Tom Zuruko. Nathan, what basically happens here in Rewriting History?
All right, so we have a comic reminiscent of when mice ruled the Earth, where Pinky and the Brain decide to go time traveling. It starts off with Pinky and the Brain watching TV, which doesn't seem like something Brain would want to do a lot, but he's upset that all the caricatures of mice are well depicted. Either they're idiots, or they're something people are afraid of, or they're an insult to call someone scared or something like that. So he ends up smashing his TV and turning the TV into a time machine somehow.
He did it. Yeah, it was a very quick transformation from TV into his time machine. He just basically threw a remote control through it and said, "Hop in the TV." Or, he grabbed a wrench. He wanted a wrench. I don't know. He's the Brain. Wrench. He's the Brain. He can do it. He knows how to do it. He
somehow attached a toaster to it, and like reminiscent of Simpsons, I guess.
Yeah. Anyway.
So they go back to caveman dinosaur time. Well, I guess caveman lizard times. And they try to talk to the cavemen, but they don't speak any English. All they do is whack things. So they can't really. They're trying to think of a way to communicate with them. At one point, Brain starts whacking Pinky with a book to try to, as a I don't know, it's kind of a joke because all the other cavemen are making different whacking sounds as they're hitting each other.
Yeah, Pinky suggests that their culture is not so bad because they have so many different sounds that they can make when the cavemen hit each other on the head. And
43 different sounds for a bonk on the noggin.
Yeah, so the Brain starts hitting him with his book and says, "I'm just trying to, incorporate you into the culture right there." So, yeah.
Yeah. But all his things are just WAP. So, I mean, he should learn some new words, I guess.
Yeah.
Eventually they find someone that's painting on the walls and he's like, "Here we go. There's still some culture in this world. We will paint." So they just end up tracing Brain's head all over everything, even on people, where one person says, "You too?" And then the other guy goes, "Tattoo." and it's pretty funny, like a tattoo.
Oh.
And then you didn't get that.
I didn't see that. No, I was paying attention to that. There's some cavemen in the background. Yeah, there's a lot of side talking going on right in this one. There's like a little lizard that is always commenting in little thought bubbles. There's a lot of comic, stuff like that.
Yeah, there's
anyway.
little thought, like Pinky has a thought bubble, which, I mean, they would never do that in whoever thought that Pinky thought anything. So, anyways, they go back to the future, just like the movie. And then they still see that Brain's head is all over the place, which is great. Well, at least the silhouette of it. So they got the big ears and his big noggin. And they hear that a parade is coming. And then they find out that it's basically a Mickey Mouse wannabe has taken over the world, at least pop culturally. So they cut down all the signs leading to the theme park. And that's how the episode ends, I guess.
Well, yeah. Let's go over the ending right there. Yeah. So basically, they think instead of like mice rule the earth or the world, where there's giant pinkies everywhere. In this case, a mouse is technically ruling the world, but it's like a Mickey Mouse knockoff. And what is he called? Ricky Rat? Yeah. Ricky Rat. They sing a little song, The Cutest Tale. I'm going to try to put it to the Mickey Mouse theme. Here we go. The cutest tail, the biggest ears. He deserves our loudest cheers. No, it doesn't work at all. Wear him on your hat or shirt or hat. Yes, sirree. It's Ricky Rat. Anyway, yeah, Ricky Rat. Basically, they made the entire world Ricky Rat. Well, Ricky Rat is the whole place has been turned into the Republic. Ricky's rodent republic, and yeah, the whole place is turned into like a giant Disneyland, basically. Because of the Brain putting his, little reminiscent of Mickey Mouse silhouette on everything.
Well, I mean, it's kind of true. Disney does own like lots of things, so it's kind of.
It certainly does. Yeah.
Right?
So there you go. Yeah, that's our cartoon right there. Nathan, what do you think? Would that comic translate well into a TV episode?
I'm gonna say pass. I mean, it's too much like When Mice Ruled the World, or When Mice Ruled the Earth, and I think that was a better segment overall. Yeah,
I agree. It was mildly amusing. The one thing that kind of stood out for me that was odd was just the different things that Pinky was saying in this. Instead of narf and point and stuff like that, he was like, when he laughed, he said harf, and then I think they were just trying to put him laughing in different ways, but it just was just weird. Like they were the way that Pinky was written just didn't seem right to me, and I don't know why exactly that was. Yeah, there was one that he said when they got to the prehistoric times, he says, "Frooks, Brain, do you think it's legal to park here?" And I'm like, Frooks? Froox? Like that's not a narf or a point. I will say one thing, and I don't know if you have a favorite moment of this comic, but I did love the try to take over the world little section right there at the beginning of the comic, just because the way the Brain's face looks is especially, I don't know, it just looks really, really cool. It looks almost...
It's actually like scary.
Yeah, it's really kind of scary. So we'll put that up on our Instagram right there, because that's a pretty cool caption right there, or a pretty cool oh gosh, what's the term for a comic square? The comic square.
Cell?
Sure, why not? There's a word for it, and I forgot it, and then people are screaming it at me.
Panel?
Again. There you go. Thank you, Nathan. Panel.
There we go.
Panel. It's a good panel. Well, let's see. I'll go ahead and talk about the next comic. It's called Animaniacs in Coco, anyone? And in this comic, this is kind of a cool Animaniacs, the comic, because Yakko, Wacko, and Dot are at a fashion show, and they're going to see their Dot's old fashion designer friend, Coco Gazelle, which, of course, is the parody of Coco Chanel. And they basically talk all about... they're waiting for the fashion show to begin, and as soon as it gets close to beginning, Yakko and Wacko are chasing around all the models saying, hello, nurse, until they go up to one roadie guy and they catch themselves in the middle of saying "Hello, nurse," and their mouths hit the ground. It's a very funny looking panel. And they say,
yeah, that's my favorite.
Yeah. They say, no doubt about it. We got to get our radar checked. And they have to put their rubber mouths back together. So a very, very funny kind of thing right there. But really, when they go and meet Coco Gazelle, they talk about how, there was that one time where we did something bad with, something bad happened with Coco that one time. And they talk about, they have a flashback, basically. They have this little wavy line thing in one of the panels, and Yakko says, "Cool fade, huh? You can get the same effect by pressing your eyeballs really hard, but kids, don't try this at home." So they're back in France, and even a couple of like Squit and Bobby are in the on one of the trees, and they have little pigeon berets on. Coco Gazelle comes up to meet them, and she's wearing a really weird looking ball gown, almost like Scarlett O'Hara. And Dot, goes up to the little dog and says, "I'm sorry I shaved you last time I saw you." And of course the dog gets angry, and Dot spills coffee all over Coco, or maybe it's Coco all over Coco. Is it Coco?
It is.
It is.
It's hot chocolate.
Oh, there you go. How appropriate. Anyway, her dress is ruined, so they take her in and they redesign it, and it turns into a nice, lovely designer black evening dress right there. And wouldn't you know it, of course, that dress is perfect, and she ends up becoming famous because of it. And that's pretty much it. That's the plot right there. And at the end of it, the Warners are back at the fashion show and harassing the models once again. And one of the models says, "Somebody give me a crowbar and a lawyer." So I thought that was a pretty funny line right there.
It's pretty apt in this
exactly
in this environment. Yeah.
It's what every woman out there needs today is a crowbar and a lawyer. I think that's a good thing to have in today's environment. Anyway, Nathan, what do you think about this one? Was this could this translate into a cartoon?
I think the flashback part would make it a weird, like going. I don't know. I just felt like that would be a weird thing to have in a cartoon.
It doesn't. It didn't necessarily feel like it was necessary, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it was kind of cool to see. It was a cool effect on the panel itself, going from present day to the past. But it wasn't necessary. I don't think.
Yeah, I think if they did it in a cartoon, I think they would have to start in the past, and then they would cut to the future, like 6 months later, like, oh, we're at the design show, I guess, or something. I don't know, but
yeah,
or just cut out half the episode, basically, or I don't know. I personally don't think it would translate very well.
Yeah, it was okay. You would need some work. It was okay. It was okay. What, you have any favorite moments of this comic right here? This story?
There's the whole storyline where Wacko's getting pooped on by little pigeons. Apparently, keeps happening.
Yeah,
although, I felt like the pigeons looked like color drawing, basically, like Bobby and Squid.
They were. Yeah, maybe they're distant relatives because they were in France, right? So it may not be
exactly.
Bobby.
So
yeah, well, we can't trust the coloring too much in these comics. They're not. Depending on who's the colorist on these cartoons, it could look totally different.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it was cute. The best panel though is by far the jaw dropping and just having. They have like cute eyes. It looks like, but
yeah, they have
the
little
guy's face.
Yeah, the guy's face is like he has two eyes going two different directions. Yeah, and it did have a cute little 90s reference in here that I thought was kind of cool. It was the boys are at the fashion show, and they are at the very beginning, they're very upset about the models. Like, you call these guys models, and of course they're looking at all the roadies who are setting up everything. One guy has his butt crack hanging out and everything. And Dot says, "The show hasn't started yet, you clueless fashion victims." And she says, "Boys, the reason grunge was invented." So there you go. Grunge. The grunge look of the 90s was referenced. That was about the only 90s. They kind of referenced Kate Moss a little bit with Kate Floss, I think. But, other than that, it stands up in today's world. Anyway, we have one more story here called Guitars and Cadillacs. And Guitars and Cadillacs was written by Dave Kling. Penciler was John Costanza. Inker was Scott McCrae. Letterer was Bob Pinaha. And the colorist again was Tom Ziuko. And Nathan, what happens here in Guitars and Cadillacs?
All right. Well, we start off with a water tower escape, and it's pretty simple. They just jump out of the water tower and on top of Ralph the guard.
Yeah.
They then meet a country singer who's a terrible singer but is handsome, according to Dot, and his name is Hank Hickory. And though he's a terrible singer, he wants to be famous, so they decide to go to Nashville to make his dreams come true. So they have a road trip, and on the way, as they're driving near Flagstaff, Arizona, hey, Joey.
Hey.
They get pulled over by a cop because they're going 0.00026 miles per hour over the speed limit. But to get out of that ticket, they just sing terribly, and the cop lets them go. And then they find themselves in Nashville, Tennessee, right outside a record company, basically, looking for new talent. They meet the CEO or whatever, the president. His name's Waylon Dollar. They sing for him, and he's quite impressed. He goes in the other room to get them all ready, but then they're like, hey, we should eavesdrop. And he's talking to someone like, hey, I found a terrible band. They're going to be so terrible. It'll be a great tax write-off for the company, kind of like The Producers, if you've seen that movie.
Yeah, that's what I thought, too. It was very much like, here's a Springtime for Hitler kind of act for us that'll fail, and then we'll get the money.
Exactly. So that's what I kept thinking for the rest of the episode, and I'm just didn't pay attention. No,
you just put the comic down and watched The Producers, and there you go.
He says, everyone's gonna love it, and then Michael's like, everyone? What about this person, this person? He's like, okay, those are just random people, but no. Anyways, let's go. You guys go get dressed, and then they start putting on terrible costumes. Either their hats are too big, they're just wearing cactuses or scuba gear. He's like, I'll show you what to wear. The press conference is going to start pretty soon, so he puts on like basically an Elvis kind of outfit, and he's like, and then you want to dance around like this, and you want to make a lot of noise. And then while he's doing all that, Dot opens up the curtain so that the press sees him, and he's like, yeah, the press is really stupid, they don't really care anyways. And then the press is like, oh, we're stupid, huh? They start taking pictures of him and start laughing at him. And then he is ashamed and leaves the company. And the guys in Hickory's like, hey, I guess I'll never be a star. And he's like, and Yakko's like, hey, I guess this company needs a new president, though. He's like, oh, president, that sounds good.
Because like, goodness knows they just hire anybody off the street to become a president of the company.
Whoever's in the room at the time, right?
That's the rules of corporate takeovers. If the president gets fired and you are in the room, if you say, I will be the president, then you become the president of the company. So,
that's right. That's why the vice president is always in the Oval Office.
Yeah, that's right. They always have to keep him around.
In
case something happens.
Leaves, yeah.
Exactly. So. You're like, oh, I'm president. Anyway. So this was an interesting plot of this comic. It was it had some cute moments, I thought, of going across the country and all, and but yeah, a little confusing at the end, because especially when the Hollywood the record producer, I should say, gets all like, oh, you know, these guys will be a great tax, they're terrible, and then they say, well, here's our costumes, and they give out a bunch of like horrible costumes, like, we'll be in scuba gear, and we'll be in this, and we'll be in a giant cactus. And he says, no, that's not how you should dress to be successful. And I'm like, wait, you want them to be bad, don't you? Like, that doesn't make... You just said in the last page that you want these people to be horrible so they fail. And now you're so concerned about...
I think the first one where they have giant hats and a giant bow tie is probably the best case scenario, where they know that they're country singers. I was like, yeah, that's actually pretty good for what you're going for. Like...
Yeah, so that was the only part that was a little confusing, was just the fact that the guy was very... He said, you can sound horrible, but you can't look horrible. You have to make sure. So anyway, that was a little weird. But overall, I don't know. I thought this might work as I was watching this, I was like, or reading it, I was like, you know what? I could see this turning into an actual cartoon, you know, like a road trip aspect to it. And they could
got music.
Yeah, you got some music. Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of this has music, like they're singing and they're terrible. And you're like, well, it kind of falls flat on the comic. But they could make it sound pretty good. What do you think, Nathan?
Yeah, I think this, of the three like segments or whatever, I think this one would be the most apt to become a cartoon.
Yeah. And there's one little reference, I guess, in here. They talk about, he says, these are my background singers, referring to Yakko, Wacko, and Dot. He says, these are the Tunettes, I believe is what he says. And they go, the Tunettes? They go, is that us? And they say, well, you don't see Buster Bunny and Babs Bunny around here, do you? So there was our one little reference to another show. So there you go. Yeah. Buster and Babs got a shout out in this comic. But yeah, there you go. Well, Nathan, giving this comic out of 5 water towers, let's go ahead and give this one a water tower rating as well. So what do you think? Out of 5 water towers, how many water towers would you give this comic?
I can't remember what I gave the other ones, but I'll say 2.5.
2.5. Why is that?
I mean, it has Pinky in the Brain, which is good. And yeah, I mean, it's a comic. I can't remember what I gave the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's slightly worse than the second one. I think it's the worst of the 3 so far.
Yeah, of the 3 we've read, I think it's definitely probably the lower of them.
So if I would do half a water tower less than comic 2. So maybe I'll say 2. I'll say 2 water towers.
Oh, okay. It's going down lower. We better stop him before it goes down lower. Yeah. Okay, so I'll go ahead. I will give it I'll give it a 2.5. I mean, it was not bad. It was just, I don't know, that first one was just so repetitive of Pinky and the Brain's first one. It did have a couple good panels in it. And it was good, but yeah, I didn't really go for it that much. Well, you can read this comic, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. You can get it used at online comic shops. That's where I got mine to read. And it is available online. I'm not going to condone any specific, using it, going to online places because, well, I don't know. No one's getting paid for this one. It seems out of print. Like it's not even being print digitally anymore. So I don't know. It's out there on various.
Just Google it.
Google it if you want to read it. It's out there. If you really want to look at it, and you should check out the artwork. It's some good stuff. Do a Google check and see what's up. Well, that's about it for today's episode, I think. And let us know what you think about the upcoming reboot news and Animaniacs revival, whatever you want to call it. And as more news comes out, we'll make sure to share it with you here on the Animanicast. You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on Instagram. Nathan, where can people follow you online?
On Twitter. That's right, folks. Twitter, the one and only place to find me, Nathan. Django FT.
That's right. People have tried to find Nathan other places, and they just have not been successful. So, Django FT for Nathan. And, of course, you can get in contact with us, which is animanicast@retrozap.com. And speaking of retrozap.com, ladies and gentlemen, there's so much great stuff at retrozap.com. You should head on over there. There are 21 podcasts in all at retrozap.com to check out, covering Star Wars and also all of your pop culture needs. It's a great place to go to for articles, videos, and just stuff in general. Just head to retrozap.com today. Well, that'll do it for me and Nathan, and we'll be back next week talking about, well, everything goes as planned. We'll be talking about episode 71 of Animaniacs, and Kelly will be back here as well. So until next week, this is Joey, and for Nathan, good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
This podcast is not endorsed by Warner Brothers or Amblin Entertainment and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Animaniacs, the Warner Brothers logo, all names, pictures, and sounds of the Animaniacs characters or any other Animaniacs-related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Warner Brothers, Amblin Entertainment, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of the Animanicast unless otherwise indicated.